once upon a time in a game of dreams. I see a beautiful girl with colorful hair that will soon fall in love with me. Sometimes it's cold outside, I wanna get under the sheets. Then I see your empty bed and just wanna go to sleep. One day you gave me your number with 7 kisses and no hugs. But it turns out they were kisses. There were 7 deadly exes, and I have to save my life from getting beat up.
Hey.
Welcome. It is Wednesday. It is another episode of the Mattriarchy. I am, as per usual, your host, Matt Rhys, coming to you from gorgeous fall in Scottsbluff, Nebraska. And I am joined today by the Metal.
Howdy.
And by Cartoonicus.
Stay tuned.
And we will eventually be joined by Twitless. But he had something last minute, came up. It was a thing. So we are trudging forward to kill time till he can get back. And part of killing time was, of course, listening to our new opening for the duration of the pilgrimage. So hopefully you enjoyed that.
Thankfully, from my friend Jen Michaels, who I knew back in college, who gave me the rights to use an album re-recorded in my apartment because I'm the only one who even has those recordings anymore. So he's like, yeah, use them however you want.
Nice. You know, we could maybe do something fun with that. Hey, Twitless, you're back.
What's up?
You missed the musical number.
Oh.
Yeah. Catch it on the replay. It's fine. Okay. So today was
it a Scott Pilgrim versus the World Ruined a Generation of Women?
No.
It should have been. That would have been appropriate.
Tribute to Ramona by my buddy Jen Michaels.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's very much in spirit, the inverse spirit of that particular song.
Gotcha.
So
we'll put the two together and do a mashup.
Maybe we can. Okay. Anyhow, so today we are here to dig into the hotly contested world of Scott Pilgrim, where we will pick up where we left off discussing episode 2, issue 2, however you want to look at it. I will say, last week, I don't know if you guys noticed, Metal and Cartoonicus, I did not delete our apology stream because people kept leaving comments, and I was like, change the title, it's fine. So,
apology stream? Oh.
Yeah. Hey, sorry, we're not doing this week.
Yeah.
We're not doing this this week.
Sorry, anytime I hear someone talking about an apology on the internet now, I assume someone has done something horrifying and is now having to do the obligatory apology video.
Oh, yeah.
Then
No,
a ukulele's involved.
Yeah. Well, I guess I don't have a ukulele. I have a lap dulcimer, so I could have pulled that out, but I didn't. So, anyhow, when we last left Scott Pilgrim, is this a good way to jump in, guys? I'm just saying.
Sure.
If there's anything else we need to hit on first, talk about anything weird. Okay. where we last left Scott, he had just discovered that he A, was dating Ramona, and B, as a requirement for that, would have to defeat her 7 evil ex-boyfriends. 6 remaining. Okay. And I want to point that out because the gender non-specificity of the X's doesn't show up until like volume 4 or something. So I thought that's a funny joke. Anyhow, so what do we think? What do we think? Did we like it? Hate it? Well, I liked it. The second volume.
I'm pretty sure that the answer from the top half of the panel is pretty. I predict.
Well, so here's the thing.
Here, we'll just change that around. We'll shake it up a little.
If I may,
Okay. I didn't say you have to do that. I'm just saying it's just funny because it's like.
I would like to bring up the fact that when we did this last time about Volume 1, I felt we really spent the entire hour with basically Rhys and Metal having to defend the comic from Twitless and I. And Rhys just constantly having to ask the question, so what's the problem? So why don't we start this stream with you guys actually getting to tell us what you do like about the comic?
I really enjoyed the fact that, well, I mean, I guess we should probably like give a little breakdown of how the plot progresses, right?
Sure.
So rather than just jump in, because I mean, one of the things that I really liked about the book answers one of the complaints you guys had last time, is you felt that Matthew Patel was too easy to defeat. Scott just dodges around him the whole time, and the power of friendship bowls him over and all that kind of stuff. But I'm going to forget the skateboarder dude's name.
Lucas Lee.
Lance. What?
Lucas Lee.
Lucas Lee. There you go. He gives Scott a couple of what fors at the very beginning of the thing. I just and so that's so I think that's one of my favorite moments in the whole story. Is just how badly Scott just takes it.
And he deserves it.
Oh, yes.
Just straight up.
Yeah.
Because, which I guess we might get into that more.
Yeah, let's get into that a little as we go on. So,
yeah.
Did anybody, because I did not, I'm sorry, I did not prepare visual aids. Did anybody prepare visual aids?
I mean, I've got the whole thing up here. I can
there you
certainly, go. I might as well.
I've got it too.
Whoops.
Rhys.
Yeah. I'll just have this up.
So we start with the flashback of Scott in high school, meeting a new character who we have not met previously, Lisa, who Scott befriends in the most platonic of ways, and also how Scott meets Kim Pine, which I think Kim is actually a really interesting character in the context of the story, because something about the girl who is just fed up with everything is something that I love that character.
Yeah, but you actually get to see like why she's fed up with everything, because in this little flashback, she's kind of chipper for the most part. Like, she doesn't seem too happy because she's just in. Or like she just meets these new kids, but then she meets Scott, and it's like, okay, well, I've got like a boyfriend, and I'm happy, and then her boyfriend leaves her to move to another town, so that's like the start of the depression. And then I do think most of it's just Scott, like getting being friends and meeting together later on, and having to deal with all of Scott's BS throughout their entire young adult life. Right. Scott would probably make anybody fed up with anything.
Yeah. But one of the things I think is also fun from a metatextual, maybe that's not the right word, but from outside of this story specifically, is that before Scott Pilgrim and the thing was created, O'Malley's like one of his first attempts at a webcomic was working out a webcomic about Kim. I can't remember the title of it all of a sudden. But she
I
was
think
the.
in my folders we actually
I'm sorry?
segment of that. In the folders that I uploaded, I think we actually
Yeah,
have a
yeah.
segment of it. Let me.
But I just can't remember the name of it right now. So I'll have to look it up later. But so Kim actually predates Scott Pilgrim and the rest of the characters, and so that's something I think is kind of fun from that whole perspective. So at the same time,
It was just
taking this
the wonderful world of Kim Pine.
The wonderful world of Kim Pine. Thank you. So taking this flashback into Scott's world is enjoyable. I think, and it's also fun because it kind of sets up that paradigm of the mundane and the outlandish just being part of Scott's experience, and so that doubles down on the whole thing. Now, Twitless, I know that was one thing that you felt was weird and irreconcilable when we talked last time, and I want to take take a moment to point out a comment that was made on our video.
Oh, okay.
That somebody replied the next day. It was Edming, and I was going to load it up ahead of time, but his so I'm just going to paraphrase it rather than try to take the time to look for it. He said, "I don't understand how Twitless and his fan of butt jokes somehow doesn't appreciate Scott Pilgrim."
Twitless is a fan of butt jokes?
Yes, that was when we did Twitless's edgy comics. Like there were so many butt jokes
apparently.
that were part of
It's a long-running bit now.
Yeah, whenever Edming is able to show up to a live stream,
Right.
there's inevitably a comment about Twitless and his love of butt jokes.
Anytime Twitless even once says that he likes or hates something, that immediately becomes
His thing.
his reputation forever.
Mm-hmm. No, this happens a lot. No, I do a lot of comic book reviews. You'd be surprised the reputation I get.
But I just thought wanted to point out just needly a little bit, just a gentle needling. But
like I can boil it all without having to rehash stuff because I think I don't have nearly as much to say regarding this volume. I think to kind of like summarize where my stance is, but also to clarify it a bit and maybe qualify it. I have no problem with the goals that O'Malley has for this work. I think the issue I have, and it's less of something in Volume 2. I think Volume 2 didn't for some reason didn't quite hit me the same way. But the goals of being like a romantic comedy action thing with pop culture references, the goals that he's trying to hit. I want to be funny. I want to be moving. Like I have no problem with his goals. I think the only issues I'm having are some of the techniques that he's using to accomplish them. And some of the techniques he's using to accomplish them, the way I interpret them is that he's being lazy. And that rubs me the wrong way at times. And now I understand, like I get the meta of the fact that in a work where he's portraying a slacker, that being stylistically lazy is in fact on brand. I get that. I do.
But that doesn't necessarily increase your enjoyment of the product.
Correct. There are moments where it's just like I said, it is rubbing me the wrong way. So like I said, that's partly a your mileage will vary element.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And one of the things I was thinking about the next day after our last discussion was some of the stuff you guys were talking about was about suspension of disbelief. And I got to thinking about it. Everybody is going to have a different threshold for what they're willing to believe about a story.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah.
Right. And it's something that I had no problem buying into the world the way it was framed and how matter of fact everything strange was, and how everybody just sort of was like, well, that was weird, and just went on about their business. I had no problem with that. But I think it was you, Cartoonicus, and forgive me if I'm misattributing this. When you see the real life version of this girl from your dreams, and she tells you she's skating through your brain, and your response is, well, that's cool. and like that's it. That's all the story goes. How can you like? Why is people not freaking out about this? And what's good for me is like I understand why in the real world somebody freak out about this, but that's the conceit of this story. And then we're accepting, giant ninja battles and people turning into video game tokens. So, the subspace highways, man, I'm gonna totally not even question that.
I think the clash for me with that is is how seriously we are also expected to take the emotional beats.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, the track switch between that. So like, I'll give an example of where it works for me. So a show that I have watched, it's a lot of film and TV. Like just didn't grow up with that stuff, but a show I have watched all the way through, Scrubs, right?
I hate Scrubs. I hate Scrubs.
Oh, now that
I
is
love
interesting.
Scrubs is a garbage show made by garbage people for garbage people. I hate. No offense to people that like it.
This
guys
is
would,
quite the development.
I hate Scrubs.
Well, let me point out though
the only show that I hate worse than Scrubs, like in the same like genre and feeling, is The Big Bang Theory. It's just.
Well, I'm not a big fan of The Big Bang Theory, but I do like Scrubs. But
I like one character on Scrubs, and that's the janitor.
Well, I know exactly where he's going to go with this. So
right, so
anyway, I'm gonna stop. Sorry,
that's fair. That's fair.
I had a visceral reaction.
The concept that I think Cartoonicus is kind of onto where I'm going with this. So there's zany humor all over the place, but the zaniest stuff is all in JD's head. And so they're able to have their cake and eat it too, to do crazy nonsense, because then it's just cut back to, it's just JD and he's just kind of staring off into space because he just imagined all the nonsense. And so, because that show also has a lot of crazy, goofy airplane style humor, like from the film Airplane. And
Right.
then it has very, very serious dramedy, drama stuff where you'll often be laughing at silly stuff and then crying by the end of it, kind of stuff. The intention of, so the show is dealing with both of the tones, but they're able to handle the suspension of disbelief by basically being like, most of the goofy stuff is happening in imaginary land. So I guess that's where I'm drawing the line, is that like, I'm being asked to, I think we can move on, like I said, because I don't want to just rehash this all over again. But I feel like I'm being asked to process certain things very seriously, and I'm also being asked to process other things without a serious, like it's almost like if you try to, it's almost punishing if you try to. You'll feel punished if you try to process this other thing seriously, and that's reconciling the two of those is causing me problems.
So here's where I see where you're coming from, but like if I already didn't trust doctors, Scrubs, and the fact that medical professionals I know love Scrubs makes me trust doctors even less. Because that idiot should never touch anybody like another human being. Like that guy doesn't deserve human contact.
Gotcha.
Shouldn't be able to buy things at the grocery store. Shouldn't be able to pay somebody else to tie his shoes because that guy can't figure it out.
But he's silly. It's silly. You're supposed to. It's working as intended.
He's not silly. He's stupid. And with Scott Pilgrim, he's supposed to be stupid. So I can easily accept he's stupid. Whereas with Scrubs, you're expecting to forget how stupid this guy is because he's really a competent genius doctor who's definitely not a moron.
So what you're saying is that you can't reconcile. See, I feel like we're having the same problem just with different products.
Well, that's exactly what I'm saying. Is like, I really appreciate.
That's funny.
I really appreciate you. I'm sorry to talk over Cartoonicus there. But I really appreciate you framing it this way, because that really helps me understand kind of where you're coming from. Because like last week, not last week, 2 weeks ago, I was so baffled that how you felt the need to reconcile these things that I don't think are really connected, because it's a fantasy and it's a pastiche.
Well,
so
I might even go a step further, right? Because I was sick last time. I wasn't really able to like engage quickly or anything like that. I had to like sit there and process my thoughts.
And we thank you for plugging along.
Yeah, but especially the way you're framing it now. it's not even about like having to reconcile these things that I don't even think are connected. I'm not even seeing the thing that you're having to reconcile. I've probably read this book more than anybody else on this panel. I've read this series at least 5 or 6 times through, right? And at no point reading this did I ever feel like I was being asked to take the romantic part of this story seriously.
I disagree. I vehemently disagree.
Right. But the thing is like, for me, that's not even a burden of belief, because idiots fall in love all the time. So it's,
there's humor in it. No, like, don't get me wrong, but like the emotion, this is very much a soap opera, and you're being asked to take it with a certain degree of like seriousness to it. And I do strongly believe that. And it's not all played out for laughs. The stuff that works in Scott Pilgrim, in my opinion, is in fact the stuff that works the best, no matter what we're looking at. I feel like it is in fact the relationship, the stuff where Scott Pilgrim is able to demonstrate nuance, even like this whole relationship with Kim. The fact that like, oh, it's not just a typical manga or anime setup of like, this is going to be my love interest. It's like they're just like in each other's lives for a bit, and then they're not, kind of like real life. Like, this is where O'Malley is able to really do a lot of, I think, effective storytelling. So I am invested in that, and it works. And like I said, the problem is that the more that I get invested into this, the harder it is for me to process when things go off the rails. And I'm being so like that's what I have problems, reconciling in my own mind.
So,
and I'm not.
That's
so I'm not
what I'm trying to get at, right? Is that the reason I don't think you have to take it seriously? I'm not trying to diminish what you're saying. Is that all of that is set up for it to go off the rails?
I don't see it that way. I like I said, I think is where I am processing this differently than other people. I understand that, but I think the Scrubs thing helps explain it the most.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, and it can be one of those things where, like, if you appreciate Scrubs, I suppose because of how much I don't appreciate it, I think that then I can understand how the inverse of that would be true as well, right? But I think in both cases the stories are asking a suspension of disbelief about something, and it's about a very different thing. And that I think that's a factor in all that. Anyway,
I think we're seeing two very different views in terms of world building philosophies.
Well, and I think some of it comes down to the nature of genre crossing genre crossing storytelling, and and it's also really interesting too, because I think that one thing our disagreement really highlights is that not only are there differences in these genre crossing storytelling, but also in the specific aspects of genre that different people find to be important and or essential, and that's fascinating from like a intertextual perspective, because that's not something that I necessarily would have. I mean, I can definitely see people liking different aspects of it, but the fact that like the success of the project rises or falls on the individual viewer based on different aspects of it, that's intriguing.
Sure. No, I agree. No, and I that's also why I'm like, I'm going to shut up at this point, and I'm going to let you guys. I'm going to learn from how you guys are processing this. So,
the story in their adolescence is pretty normal, high school stuff, not a big deal. And then all of a sudden, Kim gets kidnapped by this dude, Brian Lee. I can't remember. Who's at an all boys school across town.
Metal, what's his name? You've read this 6 times.
No, I think you got it right.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, and
that is a reference. That is a reference to River City Ransom, right? I
think so. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it is.
Okay.
There's a lot of beat 'em up references, and that River City Ransom gets referenced like 5 or 6 times throughout Scott Pilgrim.
So then Scott goes to rescue her and defeats them all in Scott Pilgrim fashion, and then it jumps out of that teeny bopper Archie style normal life kind of a thing. All of a sudden, we're back into the beat 'em up action genre, and coming back around to the present day, right? And so Scott saves Kim. They're an official couple, and then Scott moves, and then we're flashed forward into modern day with Scott and Ramona. I am going to refresh my connection. There's something weird here, so I'm going to disappear for just a second.
Okay.
Yeah, which even this this beginning part, they make it kind of clear. I think his name is Simon. And this beginning part, they're trying to make it seem like you can't trust this. Like this might be an unreliable narrator. And part of that is how quickly it clips between one day to the next and how they frame this. So these events happened, but you're not sure if they happened exactly the way that they're being portrayed in front of you, which does end up being brought up later, but that's much later.
I'm not sure
so
how,
that's a
but
big thing.
I swear I missed some of this.
You missed the Simon stuff?
Yeah, and I don't know how that's possible.
Simon Lee, that's right.
So strange.
But yeah, you can't be sure right now that this happened exactly the way it was, especially because of the way like Kim is talking to him when he rescues her. Like, I was secretly hoping it would be you, Scott.
Do you think this is all in Scott's mind?
Not that it's all in his
Don't
mind. No. But
you can't let too much away.
No, but right now it is kind of building up that this might be unreliable narration. And part of it, too, is that we do end up in Scott's dreams very often. So far, like, even in the first one, in this one, we end up in his dreams a couple times, like Ramona just pulls through, coming back from deliveries and stuff. So you don't know if you can trust these events that are being done at the beginning of the story.
Can anyone help me understand why in this book they even bothered to focus on Kim's story? Because it doesn't seem like it's actually going anywhere or add anything to the overall plot.
It will.
It will. It's setting up for something. But also right now what it does is it kind of lets you know more about Scott as a person, just a little bit. Setting up like his character and personality, and that he hasn't actually changed since high school or middle school.
I also have to admit that there's a bit of this is something I will defend. Occasionally, the lit major in me is I get a little intrigued. And it tickles my brain a little bit to see somebody do something where I cannot clearly see what role that character serves. Because I'm so used to knowing this is the protagonist and this is the love interest. And so to introduce a character where it's not clear that it's like, oh, they were just in each other's lives for a little bit, and I'm going to kind of focus on her, but nah, don't worry about it. That part there actually like makes me wonder and makes me it keeps me guessing as to what the author is doing with that character. And I think as long as ultimately there's either a satisfying payoff for it or the ambiguity is itself interesting, that doesn't bug me.
I do wish that kind of thing would be summed up in the same book and not held for like 3 or 4 chapters later.
Well, I wouldn't want to know the secret of the Hound of the Baskervilles in the first chapter.
No, but these aren't chapters. These are individual volumes. And I always read that as, an individual story of itself. And when you're like putting this stuff here, imagine if we put some scene in a movie that wasn't going to pay off until 3 movies later.
Well, I think that just
kind of
depends
thing
on
bugs me.
the nature of how the book is written. It's like, You can look at the Lord of the Rings, for example, where all of them were written to be one big volume, but the publishing company's like, no, you have to chop it up into like 3. These are written to be read as one book. They just came out over time.
Yeah.
I almost wondered if they were supposed to be, just individual 30-page, issues.
No, they came out as the trades to begin with. I think they had floppies that were promotional items during the course of things, but they were intended to be, this 6-volume set. So
I'm just saying that Kim's character was interesting to me, and the fact she didn't play out like a normal just love interest character or an ex-girlfriend archetype was like, oh, that's neat. And it fleshes out the story, rounds it out a bit, and that's nice. So
I'm looking for the part where we see her not just in flashbacks, but actually in her apartment.
Well, that's a bit later in the thing.
No, but I do think that's a good thing to point out because that will end up playing more of a role. But a lot of what Kim's role is in general is that she's there and she's living her own life, but her life is affected by Scott. So Kim, I guess from like a literary perspective, is kind of a mechanism to show off what Scott does to other people.
Sure.
Is that because I did not get that from this scene. Feels like they're setting up, she's having trouble in her own life.
That's not Kim.
Yeah, it's Kim.
Oh no,
That's
sorry.
Kim. She works at the video store. Yeah.
Sorry, I was referring to the blonde. All my comments
okay.
are Lisa's.
Oh, I see. No.
Okay. Well, that has a different payoff later.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Like, Lisa is not just like the typical X archetype. She's this like side kind of, never mind.
No.
It was obvious when they got to the very end what they were going to be doing in the next volume. Yeah,
Lisa's got a huge part to play. I think in volume 4 and 5. But yeah, she's there for a reason. It's just one of those things that doesn't show up until later.
My comments work for both Lisa and Kim, which is the fact that the story is not afraid to like step outside of its regular protagonist for I wouldn't say extended period, but I like it when stories do stuff like this, like Miria with Berserk takes a flashback concept and goes with it so long it basically it takes over the story. It purposefully destabilizes the narrative, and I love what that does to the story overall. And so when authors are able to do stuff like, hey, we're supposed typically, point of view should be on Scott with maybe only brief breaks, the fact that it can really take a moment and
I have no problem
step in other characters
on multiple characters. I like to, multiple stories being told at once. But I got to the end of this and I'm like really not even sure why I just got through all of that. Like it never seems like it has anywhere to go with her or that her character has any real importance in the rest of the story.
Well, like it's been said, like I'm willing to. I've not read the whole thing, but like this one, I think you're supposed to they're planting seeds that are supposed to grow later over those volumes, and that's the impression I got.
At least here, they're actually using her to tell his story, but
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with your planting seeds. That's fine.
There's another thing I brought up before with the unreliable narrator, and this is something that it kind of was planted in the first volume, but it is laid out a lot more clearly in this one. But the only narrator you can trust is the present, like what you see during the present time. Anytime you see a flashback, depending on who that flashback is coming through, like if Ramona's talking about one of her exes and everything, all of those are flavored by the person that flashback's related to. And we see that later where Ramona and Lucas Lee give two, not even differing, but antagonistically contrasting accounts of what happened to them when they were dating for their short period.
So I had totally forgotten actually that Scott comes in the second half of this part, and it's hitting me. You ever watch? Now, I'm sorry, I'm going to bring up yet another medical show, so Rhys is probably going to hate this. But you ever watch something like ER or House, and they'll always have this kind of central hub area.
I don't hate House.
And all right, so you'll have somebody running down the hallway with a patient on a gurney, and there's two other people behind them, and he's saying, we need to get 50 cc's of this in her stat, yada. And the camera follows them, and as it reaches the central point, somebody else walks by, and then suddenly the camera shifts, and we're on somebody else now for the focus of their story. As they walk like the other way, and they enter their office, and a patient is waiting for them, right? And they would have those kinds of ways of transitioning something so that you were constantly feeling the chaos of what it's like to be in an ER. I'm almost wondering if that is kind of what they're doing here with Kim, starting her off in the morning, and then eventually kind of just managing to fuse into Scott's story before moving forward with him instead.
I think it has more to do if you look at the big picture, and of course we're not to the big picture yet, but I really feel it has more to do with looking at the world that has formed itself around Scott and why. I think that's a big factor in why some of these side characters show up the way they do in the way they do.
I guess I just haven't seen what effect he supposedly has on her.
Well, she didn't hate everything before they dated, and after they dated, she hates everything.
That's it.
So that's one thing anyway.
And especially in the previous one, it happens a couple times here. Kim is constantly berating Scott, right?
Oh, yeah.
She's cracking jokes at his expense. And there's implying some like deep-seated resentment towards Scott as a person.
Right.
And yet, at the same time, when you look at when they're having their during the fight scene with Matt Patel, she's still behind him. She's still on his side on things, even though she kind of hates him. So there's her feelings towards Scott are more complex than anything Scott has ever felt before.
And are you saying this part of the story is supposed to show us why she feels that way?
It begins the hints of it all. It doesn't show it all, because like that's something
they're planting seeds. There's not the crop is not going to grow here.
So maybe it's the unreliable narrator
scene
that is supposed to be hinting at us that something far worse than what Scott remembers is actually what happened.
Perhaps.
Yeah, well, the point of this scene is that it's one of the only scenes where you get both of them alone in the present. So you get to see what their character dynamic is by themselves. And a part of it here is that, like, Kim still berating Scott, but because Scott is just such an airhead, everything she says kind of just slips by him because he's just thinking about his own world every time. And a lot of Scott's, I guess, effect on other people is the fact that he lives in his own world, right? He doesn't have a bone of empathy in him. It's not that he doesn't care about other people. He just can't understand what's going on with other people's lives because they're not his life.
And so let's go back just for a moment in the story, right? So when we catch back up with the modern time after the flashback, Wallace and Scott are on the bus, and Wallace says, by the way, you have to break up with Knives. And if you don't, I'm going to tell Ramona that you're dating two girls, right? Like, he gives him an absolute ultimatum. This has to happen. And Scott's a great big whiny baby, and so waffles about it. But eventually breaks up with her at the record store in the most generic way possible.
Right.
Just absolutely crushing this poor girl.
I don't know. She seemed to bounce back pretty well.
Well, she goes through the stages of grief, and she's in denial for quite a bit.
Yeah, there is nothing more depressing in this series than what this poor girl goes through.
I disagree. I've read stories where I am like, my heart is weeping by the halfway, 3/4 of the way through, she's like Death Ninja, and it's
That's only the
She
beginning. Just wait.
approaches anger. Yeah,
yeah.
Knives has a very, very interesting arc in here, but there's no way of saying that like the damage that Scott does to this girl lasts for a long time.
Yeah.
I will admit, by the way,
this moment right here is where I felt the worst for her. This is where I was like, oh, really? You're gonna? Oh, that's rough.
Yeah.
I do find this a hilarious visual gag, though. I actually really appreciate this image.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, even in the next few,
yeah, Scott is kind of a sociopath.
They explain it. I mean, there's reasons that it comes across that way, but there was a study that was done amongst people involved in like war and terrorist activities and gang activities, in that was done that demonstrates that people that are not psychopathic can exhibit the same behaviors as psychopaths as a coping mechanism for things. So, which is not necessarily germane, but I find fascinating. So I brought it up.
And of course, that's the other thing, right? When she's attacking Ramona, it's not because she's good; it's because she's, wreathed in anger now.
Well, we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
Okay.
So,
she also does get. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
So I was going to say, with moving the story along, so he breaks up with Knives, and then the rest of the next third of the book is dedicated to the build up to the fight between Scott and this book's evil ex, which is Lucas Lee. Lane?
It's Lee.
It's Lee.
It's Chris Evans.
Well, yes, it's Chris Evans.
Not yet.
Well, and this is the craziest thing about, and so of course Lucas Lee is an international film star, and he and Ramona dated in high school, and he was a skateboarder that became a movie star, and they're filming at a location there in Toronto, and I just I love this scene. Because, like I said, Scott just gets the bejeebies kicked out of him.
He gets wrecked.
And before we switch, can I point out something here?
Yes.
You see this face? This is not the face of a sociopath. He does get that he's hurting her. He's just too much of a coward to deal with it.
I think actually he feels. I don't think he feels bad for her necessarily. Right.
I agree with the coward part.
The coward part, I definitely agree, but I think he feels more bad for himself right here.
Yeah. Well, and the biggest aspect of the sociopathic behavior, and I think you may be right about him feeling bad for himself, but I think also it's a situation that like Scott's the king of compartmentalization, right? The minute he walks away from Knives, it's over. It's over. He has no more attachment to it. I think it's the very next scene where he's with the band practicing and he's working on a new riff, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I broke up with my girlfriend." Da, 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 da. It's like it's not even a thing anymore. And he's and and so like that's the whole deal.
Yeah.
And I think that
it's something he didn't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and he kept saying he didn't want to do it. He didn't want to go through this. He didn't want to, and the way it's almost framed, it's not that he didn't want to even have to consider her feelings. He didn't want to deal with her feelings.
Well, and that reflects back on the story with Kim too, because he didn't tell Kim. He asked Lisa to tell Kim that he was moving, and so that's the. And so then he didn't, but then years later, he and Kim, they're buddies because she's
Peaches
in his
and
band.
gravy.
So of course Knives will be fine eventually. So why would he even bother about it? Because Kim's always been fine, and they're just best of friends, even though Kim hates me.
I mean, like I think Scott handled it poorly, but also part of the issue. I feel like in this scenario, if she had been not in high school, I would have felt way worse about it. but Scott knows from volume 1 that like essentially he's in this relationship. He doesn't even really 100% know why he's in the relationship, which essentially means that he's using the relationship to cover up for a wound in his heart, which seems to be the breakup that we get kind of clued into here in this volume. And so, but him breaking it off with a teenager that he doesn't really have the connection with anyway, and it's kind of creepy.
It was always going to happen.
No, but obviously it's about how
it should have happened before. Like, should never have gotten here.
Yeah. No, I'm 100% with that, and I think that's actually one of the points that O'Malley is making in the way this plays out. But like that, it never should have happened before. But with that is still, we're seeing how Scott's behaviors have shaped things. Right. And one of the things I really appreciate this is because, looking at it from the big themes of the story is that, Scott's got to build up all of these consequences so that he starts to see what it's going to take for him to be a man, to really like live up to that thing. And the nature of it is it's all exaggerated. So, I mean, everything's got to be this huge deal. And even the fights are representative, I think, of that. Yeah. But there are problems that he can't just fight his way through or muscle his way through. They actually have to be dealt with honestly. And that's
the thing is, I mean, he basically just broke. He just broke up with her by text, right? It's the equivalent of how this went. It's a lot of how he deals with these situations because he doesn't want to deal with them. Mm-hmm. And if there's one thing they knew exactly how to do in this. You remember me talking about saying this book should have been called Terrible People Doing Terrible Things. The one person who isn't terrible in it is Knives. And they certainly knew how to design
Except for her trying to assassinate a girl
in the library. But even that is
she started out not terrible.
Well, right. And even her assassination
Scott drives people to be terrible.
Right. Even her assassination attempt is reasonable based upon the scenario that she knows, right? I mean, she lives in a world full of ninjas.
By making her the 17-year-old, right, and how she's the only character whose artwork I like in this, they knew how to make her this cute, innocent little girl so that you feel so much worse for her when she's being crushed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And is it a coincidence that he happens to have a skull on his shirt? In this panel here.
Oh, panels.
Oh,
I hadn't noticed that. That's really awesome.
Is that a bit of artistic rendering there?
Oh, I'm sure it is.
Yeah.
Scott could have treated like he is a plague on the life of everybody around him.
So, yeah.
We got Neostar and Jim Tuner in chat. Good to see you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for showing up. We appreciate that.
Current debate about Tony Hawk. I hated that franchise. I never liked sports video games really. So, and the skateboarder video games were definitely not a hit for me.
So speaking of skateboarders, let's get on to the fight scene. Because after all of this stuff and after Wallace, and there is one. I'm going to point out one thing. There is one thing in the story that I do not appreciate. Right? Is that they never really explain how Wallace knows about all the evil X's, like what kind of system they have in place for him to have the inside skinny on all of them. Like, and something like that would have only taken like a line of dialogue to solve, and he never does it. And that's my one huge complaint.
I honestly never thought of that. Time passes so quickly in these that I always get the impression that they're always talking about everything behind the scenes.
Does O'Malley have a feud with Evan Dorkin? Every time I see him getting punched there, I just feel like that's just Evan Dorkin getting socked in the face.
Who's Evan Dorkin?
It's the writer of...
Yeah, who wrote Dork.
Yeah. Milk and Cheese.
Oh, okay.
Eltingville.
That was him.
Beast of Burden as well, which is fantastic. Anyway,
but yeah.
So let's get back to Chris Evans here.
Back to whatever. And although
Chris
Evans,
I agree though. Actually, he could have just put that like the exes had like a forum where they communicated, and maybe he just like stumbled upon the forum or something.
Right, like that would make a ton of sense. Okay. And that would actually be a fun little bit of world building to be just like, especially because like when Scott's on the computer in the first thing trying to order whatever it is from Amazon and like getting emails, like he's so dismissive of the whole process.
Find this, but Wallace would, because he's not an idiot.
Yeah, exactly. That would have been a really fun like 2-panel gag.
Do you recall me saying last time how much of a slog it often is reading the conversations? Can't help thinking he probably did originally write the exact scene you're talking about, and they just had to cut it for time, for page numbers.
That's a 2-panel joke though.
Not with his writing. It probably would have been 3 pages.
So anyway, yeah, no, I get that from a play dynamic, but it's you could do that in 2 panels. That's all I'm saying. Okay. So, so this whole segment, I love. The other thing about the segment is after, he just gets his teeth knocked in. Lucas just like has a regular conversation with him, just like, "Oh, get your breath. We'll go ahead and take care of this later."
I have mixed feelings on this. Right. I like this, and then I hate.
Yeah, I remember not liking that.
There's one thing I hate, and it's going to come across. I don't know how this is going to come across. I think the one thing I hate about the setup here.
Tuner's cracking me up.
Actually, it's the payoff. I have a problem with the payoff actually, and it's one niggle. It's one niggle, and I'm like, if this one niggle was fixed, I would accept like almost all of it. So I might as well just bring it up because it is the thing that I can't get over, and I know like it's not going to bother you guys, but somehow it bothers me. So I like and I either have some mixed sympathies, and I know you're supposed to have some mixed sympathies for some of these evil X's. I understand that's part of the setup here, but I really like the Lucas Lee kind of guy. He's set up to be kind of decent. Mm-hmm. And I understand that we're supposed to do this sort of random, you're defeated and turn into coins and crap. But what I was like, all I need to see, I needed one panel, either at the end of the book or later on in the series, which I haven't read, so maybe you guys correct me if I'm wrong, where like Lucas Lee shows up again and he's like resurrected from his arcade defeat. Like he's gotten his, like the video game logic has been
the end of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Right. Yeah. I needed that. I needed that moment where it's like, yes, he got the comeuppance. Yes, he's being used as a video game asset, but that he's still alive. He can go and because like we get that scene where he's like, I'm going for an Oscar, and like and when we see tears in his eyes, I'm like, oh, he's a real person. Like those are the scenes where make me feel like that these are things that make him a real character. And even if the other silliness is happening, like he's still a real person. And so for him to literally die, I'm like, that again, that's one of those moments that I can't reconcile. And I was like, for me, it would be 110% fixed if it's like, even if he was just in the background of it at some point, it's like, oh, there he is, and they don't have to explain it with a whole bunch of dialogue. It would just be, oh, it's the video game logic again. There he is, because
NPCs,
NPCs respawn or whatever. I don't care, but like the idea, at least from this volume, that he's like permanently dead in the grave, essentially, is like that. I don't know. I hate it. It's the thing I can't get over. I don't. So there you have it.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. See, and I thought you were going to say the thing that was that like, there's this is the one of the evil X's that Scott outsmarts. And that's fine. What are the chances of that? He's a moron. But
no, that's fine. Like that plays into like, I'm sure Rhys, you love this. That played into the whole like mythic tropes.
Yeah.
Like outsmarting your enemy so he defeats himself. That's fine. That doesn't.
Yeah, and also the thing that I really like about that too is the parallelism, because the thing that Scott and Lucas have in common, other than Ramona, is that they both are guided by their pride in different ways, but they're both guided by their pride. And so that's something that it's like they're bros here in these scenes as they're talking about stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And so Scott so that's one thing is like I really think it's interesting because like Scott knows this guy and he knows what his weakness is because I believe he's beginning to understand his own weaknesses, even if he doesn't know he's beginning to understand them.
I would have loved to have seen again, I haven't read the other volumes, but the expectation is that this doesn't happen. I would have loved to have seen this guy I would have loved to have seen them relate to each other further after the goofy video game thing happens, which I understand needs to happen. That's fine. But it's just
right. You got to have that one villain who comes back as a hero.
Why does he have to be utterly destroyed and then he's gone from the story forever?
Well, and here's the thing. Now,
the villain coming back as a hero might happen later.
Oh,
Yeah.
But it's not Lucas Lee.
Oh no.
But yes,
in the movie,
Neostar, they did explain why the evil X's are. Well, they do, not did. It hasn't happened.
Yeah, it's in volume 6, isn't it?
Yeah, but you do find out why they're united force and why they're not just trying to beat up each other. Which technically, the only reason they would beat up each other is if they all still wanted to be with Ramona, which isn't even the case for all of them. But yeah, they explain it. That's just later.
Anyway, I was going to say in the movie, that if I remember correctly, they skip over all of this. He's just some big egocentric jerk who's kind of mouthing off. And then Scott, I mean, it was not that it wasn't any better in this. After a literal fist fight with the last evil X, it is so anticlimactic because it just comes out of nowhere. Right? He just dares him, and then it's over.
Part of that is because this isn't the climax of the volume.
Right.
This is the middle portion, and it's
but even in the movie, when this is just one of 7, I felt like, wow. So we had a big fist fight for the previous guy. This guy just takes one dare and he's gone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like we are rushing through this movie.
I can see the setup here for the joke of it being this way while the real fights between Ramona and Knives. I saw that, and it was the fact that I got a satisfying fight in this volume was, I think, enough to make up for anything there, because that fight was actually oh, hey, there's some back and forth here, there's some interesting dynamics, and it's put on top of their the relationship drama at the same time. There's something to really sink your teeth into there. This is that's
So might I suggest a formatting variation where you're telling both stories at the same time and going back and forth between them little bit by little bit?
Well, then you lose the joke of, which this is where I'm gonna lean into the humor aspect, which actually that landed quite well, of Scott just being what's the cheat? First off, it should have been a different video game because the cheat codes for Sonic are just lame. But but it's putting that aside.
Yeah, but it's skateboarding and grinding and.
But the idea that while these 2 women who are important to his life are life and death with swords and stuff, he's he can't get off of not even just a video game. It's not a contemporary video game. It is a video game that is, by the time of this thing, is 20 years old.
No, it would have only been.
See that I think that could have worked if you have him literally narrating some of that.
Was this early
over their fight scene?
Yeah, this was 06, I think. This one came out. 5 or 06.
Yeah, because the first one came out in 03, but then there was a little bit before they started on this.
Yeah,
I can look up the exact date.
But anyway, I want to go back and point out for people
it's around 10 years old
for watching who might not have realized the way Lucas Lee dies, because we just skipped over it, is he's challenged to a skateboarding stunt down 100-step staircase, and ends up bursting into flames at the end. By the way, okay, cool, we'll swap over to you. By the way, down in at John Brown, where I did with my first year of college, we actually had 100-step staircase down to our soccer fields, and it was it's a lot longer. You think, 100, that's not that many. It's a lot longer than you think.
I do like this. Cumulative speed, too fast to live.
Oh, and he lands in the worst way possible. Like, look, he's hitting the concrete knees first.
It's a superhero landing.
No. Not just one knee. He's
that'll
landing.
kill you.
He's sitting on both knees. Those are just done.
So
Now, does
welcome
anyone
to
else
Hiroshi
find
Paradox.
this
It's just rubbing it in because that's literally not a fatal accident. The game he's literally rubbing it in that like no, it's just video game logic, bro.
No,
Like,
dude, after 100 steps, like yeah, that's fatal. You'll
I
crack your
will
head on
admit the
pavement.
movie did it better.
no, like
because they
no,
could show
the shot
incredible
is
amount of
him.
energy.
The shot is him annihilating his knees. I'm not saying that in reality this might
Yeah,
not
yeah.
be lethal.
Oh,
The
I
shot
see
of
what
the panel is not. If the shot had been him hitting his
Like
head
first or something.
then it would have
neck
been like
snapping.
you're dead. You're dead no
Well,
matter what.
I'm saying if you landed like that, going this fast, your knees hit first and then your head hits. Like that's how your body would
Well,
react.
I get it, but the panel we get is he's
He's just
poofing
blowing up.
from a he's blowing up from a knee shot.
The movie definitely did it better because they could show the incredible amount of energy he was building up, and then there's literally an explosion from far away.
Yeah, you don't actually get to see him landing on his knees or
Yeah,
anything. It's just he explodes in the distance.
It doesn't have the cool label that says "too fast to live." He's gonna need a lot of street
And
chicken
there's
to heal from that.
Gosh darn
They did have a
coin.
different visual gag with it because they had the numbers going up on the gate
Yeah.
and it breaks at a certain point.
Yep.
Did it?
A lot of street
So,
chicken.
I didn't remember that.
in the film, yeah, a lot of street chicken.
See his autograph.
That's so funny. So anyway, so the next big movement in the story, we'll go ahead and move this along. There's some other talking stuff. I'm trying to remember, is it Stacy? Is it Scott's sister? Or is it Kim and Ramona go out to the mall?
It's Stacy because they're friends.
Yeah.
They became friends when she came out of the bathroom at the what's his face at Leo's at the beginning for the first show, and they've been friends since then. Mostly just because Ramona keeps showing up to her work at the coffee shop, and they just keep going places together.
Right. So anyway, so they go out and Knives goes full ninja and attacks, and there's this big old fight in the middle, and Knives explains that because she's figured out that that Scott was cheating on her, and so she tries to tell Ramona, and Ramona doesn't get it at all. She doesn't because Knives isn't clear enough, and she's being crazy, and they have this whole thing, and which is something I just now realized. Like Stacy knew and didn't tell Ramona.
Yeah. And she's nervous about that a lot. Like she tries to not talk about it in several different panels.
I don't think I noticed that in reading it. I'm gonna have to go back through it again. But
she covers for her brother. Stacy's actually a good sister. Maybe not a good friend, but a good sister.
Stacy is a bad person. Jim says.
I told you, everybody's a bad person.
Everybody's a bad person.
Well, I mean, Pilgrim.
That's fair. Everybody is a bad person.
Except for Knives.
I kind of expect it more from Stacy because Stacy is a pilgrim, and there's some weird thing off with all of the pilgrims that you see. Like Scott's parents just don't seem to get it either. Like almost in the same way. Like they're off doing their own thing, but anytime they ask about like his life or whatever, it's very quick before they go back to talking about like, hey, guess where we are, or guess what we're doing, and.
Mm-hmm.
Seems to run in the family to some degree.
And the fact that like, they totally like, bailed on all three kids just to go across the, to go to Europe and everything. And so it's really weird that when they show back up later, spoiler alert.
But I think Stacy's the only one that still lives with them though.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
To be honest, that's probably just your classic, Disneyfying, get rid of the parents so you can focus on the main characters.
Yeah.
Well, and they're all grown up too.
Yeah,
I
like
mean,
even
that's-
Stacy, she's rated T for teen, but she's 19. So a 19-year-old girl still living with their parents, sure, but she doesn't need them to be around. She's got a job and does stuff.
Right.
Well, and the house across the street from Scott and Wallace's apartment is the Pilgrim's like house.
No,
from
no,
when
that's
they
the
were-
house where he grew up. They moved away from
where he
that.
grew up in. Yeah,
Yeah. But he mentioned that they didn't still live there.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
just the house he grew
That
up in.
they'd sold it. So, welcome, Abigail. So, I absolutely love the fight with knives. I thought that was a really good touch because it also looks at how Ramona doesn't know the whole story of what's going on and is being kept from that. And it also shows the level of investment that Knives has had in as she's going through this grieving process.
This
She's
is what I
looking to
wanted in
blame someone.
this is what I wanted in volume 1 in terms of like a more satisfying fight scene, which is why again I felt like it was being lazy because it was like when he decides, okay, so when O'Malley says, okay, here I'm actually going to give you a real fight scene, he can do it. Like this had an interesting setting. This is a real location apparently, and so he uses a real location that has very interesting architecture.
Yeah, both of the
as
locations are real locations.
Yeah, exactly. For this one being the strict fight scene, though, because the other one is like, oh, there's a really cool castle. Scott gets thrown into it. Now the steps.
From what I recall, every location until we get to the final one, which would be a spoiler, is a real location.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's
except
one of the.
You could argue about the subspace or not, but all of the locations in Toronto are definitely real locations.
Yeah.
So we've
That
got
That's one of the.
I was
the
just bringing up
Canadian
fact-
Stan Lee going on here, huh?
I was just bringing up the fact that he's like this is to the degree that I was saying that like the fight in volume 1 to me felt lazy. This is not nearly as this is not. I don't think I can make you make the same criticism about this. Like it's like, okay, research this interesting location, portray it in dynamic ways, have a fight that has like interesting back and forth, but also has solid subtext to it. It's like, yeah, this is what I this is not just what I want from a fight scene. This is what the expectation for a good fight scene should be. So yeah.
Yeah, and what Jim says Toronto, yuck. Well, there's lots of Toronto in these 6 books. They are Toronto. so
Yeah, similar to saying Canadian Stan Lee. O'Malley is from Toronto, so he spent a lot of time in the area. He knew the locations. A lot of people work with the areas they know. I draw a lot of Dallas in my books.
So here we go. I got to highlight Twitless's comment in the chat because it's hilarious. The ninja is apparently a subclass if you pick Canadian as your race and character creation.
I think it's just North America, period, because like Ramona is a ninja, and she's from the U.S.
And she's from the U.S. And Knives isn't actually a ninja. She's a kung fu master.
I was gonna say, is Ramona a ninja or is she a fighter?
She's wearing a black and has a scarf. She's a ninja.
No,
She's specifically pointed out as being a ninja.
Yeah, so few times in the book she is mentioned to be
Ramona?
a ninja. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, Ramona. Yeah, sorry. I thought you meant Knives.
So
In fact, I believe that gets brought up again when Scott's on the phone with Natalie. He mentions that he's dating like an American ninja girlfriend or something like that.
yeah.
Or remember one of those titles when she shows up at the door.
Jim's cracking me up.
We're gonna make some enemies here.
So anyway, so after the fight scene, which ends with nobody dead and Ramona having destroyed an art installation and hightailing it before the cops get there, which I love every piece of that sentence I just said. I just want to say. Then we get ready to wrap up the story, and Scott gets a call from a mysterious party to lead into volume 3.
Well, there's a little bit after the call.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
But that's the setup
So
Yeah.
I'm gonna
of
just
volume 3 is that whole thing.
jump to the end here.
Yeah, there's Knives recallings like, oh, I have seen this girl before.
Right. Wait, oh no, we're still going. Almost at the end here. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
So they reveal too that his big X that they were trying to not talk about in the last volume is Envy Adams, who is the leader of the Clash at Demon Head, and they used to be in a band together. Scott, Envy, and Steven. They used to all play, and because they know each other.
I'm trying to remember. Was Kim in?
I think this was before Kim came back.
Came back
Because they only ever mentioned that Steven was in a band with her.
I believe it goes over most of it right here in this last page.
But yeah, they used to have a band, and then she split off with Todd here and became big. They had a much bigger band. They're actually playing like legitimate shows and not like small little dives where they have to like compete against other people to even get a show, right? Like these guys, they're getting booked for venues, and he's like, hey, well, she tells them that they need a new opening act, so you guys should come with your new band that you have. And Scott doesn't want to do it, but obviously Steven does because like it's a show. Come on, it's good for the band. And on the way there, Ramona talks like, yeah, I used to date a guy named Todd too. And there was like the whole joke is like, oh, it would be funny if they were the same guy. Ha ha ha. And then it turns out, oh, they were the same Todd.
Right.
And that's the setup for the next volume right there.
So, to answer a quick question from Neo in the chat. So is Ramona a ninja that works as a courier, or is she a courier that trained in ninjutsu? Which came first? She became a ninja in college.
Yeah, so I would say that predates.
So she was a ninja first, and then became a courier because it was a good way to make money in Canada. So there you go.
Okay.
All right. So that is tonight's show. The end of volume 2, where we get the Clash of Demon Head appearing. So
overall impression.
Yeah, I loved it. I still love it.
I do have to say that I liked this one way better than the first.
Yeah.
It still annoyed me a lot. It's still a slog to get through. The strange parts still are always annoying when they come and go in 5 seconds. But, was there a whole lot more of the strange stuff so that I could get, slightly into the universe a little more? Yes. Was there actual story concerning characters that I could care about and feel for? Absolutely. And that right there will be enough to actually grab my attention. So I will say that much.
All right. And I will say that like some of the stuff that you said is like, how does this relate? It definitely relates into things in the next 3 volumes, as it plays out. So stay tuned.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, that's your catch line.
Oops.
I would say, like, I am trying to take some of your criticisms as serious as possible. It's just hard, I think, for me personally, because I don't think there's ever been a time that I've read this until now that I strictly tried to read it one volume at a time. When I first read it, 5 volumes were already out, and I just read all of those, like, in one sitting. Right? Mm-hmm. So, like, my whole framework of this is trying to read it almost like one book. But to give the credit, they were released as individual novels, so I should try to constrain my thought to just each volume.
Yeah, I feel like a similar thing because like I said, I binged it over a weekend. So for me, it's a situation where I keep thinking about how those tie in to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So, but yeah, I'm a fan. So, Twitless, do you feel after this second volume, the second conversation, that you were more comfortable with the journey, with the pilgrimage as it progresses?
I'm going to reserve my, like I said, I think I need to get a little further in. Like I said, I do like this one better than the first one.
Yeah, I'm just saying you're not gonna ditch us at this point. You're not like, you know what?
I'm already 2 volumes in. Like at this point, I might. It would be like not completing a video game after starting.
Ooh, I like it.
You complete video games after starting?
So, okay. Well, we're going to call that the show for tonight. Thank you guys for tuning in. Next week, volume 3. I don't see anything holding us back, but I don't know. Who knows? We'll plan on volume 3, Scott Pilgrim and the Infinite Sadness. That's it. Oh, hey, while you are out there listening in internet land, go take the time, and I don't have a link prepared, but over on Kickstarter, Mrs. H, Amy Fusco, is crowdfunding the first volume of My Superhero Power Sucks, but I do my best anyway. Go check it out. It is a 200-page manga style comic that is out there. I've been following it on the web. It's awesome. I'm definitely going to be picking it up in print so I can read it without waiting for my pages to load. So, but yeah, that's the story. Also, Nick Mueller is crowdfunding the 3rd volume of Demon Hunter Winnie the Pooh, or Winnie the Pooh Demon Hunter. I should get the title right since I'm editing it, but there you have it. Anyhow, that's my news for the day. Go give people I like money.
There we go.
So, and the metal, like to point out that Realms and Relics.
Give me money.
There you go.
And get a physical copy of Realms and Relics. It's a good book.
Yeah. We reviewed the first chapter here on our first Comics Creators Club. So,
yeah, that's the exact one that we reviewed, plus 2 bonus pages, and it was flipped to left to right, so you can read it like a normal comic. The reason it was done right to left before was because that actually was a requirement for the contest it was written for, but I went through and I did the trouble of flipping everything. And even the last 2 pages, I drew as if I was still doing it from right to left, and then I flipped it for you, so it would match everything else in the book.
That's amazing. So, Twitless, have you how is your work, or have you been able to get anything more done for the Adventures of Omega Girl?
I'm currently sitting on proofs that I need to just approve for issue 4. Issues 1 through 3 are all on Indie Planet. Yeah. It's still coming. We're still working on them, and I've got colors coming in for issue 5. So
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need to pick up 3 and 4. I have not, or 3 anyway. I have not taken the time to do that yet because I'm distractible.
3's really good, and I think 4 might be one of the best I've done so far. So I'm
excellent.
Onwards and upwards. Yeah.
I know. I really liked 1, and 2 was definitely a step up. No, which is nothing to besmirch 1, by the way.
No, it's I completely understand.
But yeah. So I can only expect good things. So, also, side note, I finished Kyrie volumes 1 through 3. I had gotten 3, the most recent fulfillment from Matt Krotz, and I got volumes. I've reread the whole thing. My goodness, that is some tasty stuff. I really enjoyed that. So I hopefully this weekend or next week I'll have the time to do a video review of the first 3 volumes. But it's I'm so angry 4 isn't done yet. I'll tell you that right now. So Anyhow, that's what I've been reading lately. So anyway, we're gonna go ahead and wrap that show, call it there. Unless anybody has anything I forgot to talk about.
Well, Super Schooled is on Tapastic, so I've got the
Oh, really?
URL up there. I am getting closer and closer to finishing my game, so I will be wanting to showcase that at some point.
Sweet.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe we'll have to do like a live playthrough or something.
Right. That's
That'd
kind of
be
what I'm
fun.
thinking.
Yeah. That sounds cool. Anyway, we're gonna call it there. I will tell you, I have not set it up yet, but I am planning after we finish with the Scott Pilgrimage, to get a Comics Creators Club going. I know the two people I want to talk to. I have not had a chance to contact them yet, because I just got done with a huge project at my day job that took up the last 2 weeks. But it's done, so I feel really good about that. Anyway, but yeah, we'll hopefully be able to make that announcement here in the next couple weeks as well. So,
Right on.
Friday, I'm expecting to have another page for Forces ready to go as well. So,
All right.
senior year over there on Webtoon, and if you're a Patreon, you may be able to see it as early as tomorrow. If I finish that up, it's getting close to done, but it's not done yet. Anyway, point being, that is the show. Tune in next week for Scott Pilgrim versus the Infinite Sadness, as we look at how one man can screw up his life and still be the hero of his own story. Until next time, get out there and read some comics, especially something, kind of Canadian. Just do it, man.
Oh,
Have
actually,
a good day.
That link does not lead to Super School. That's your dashboard link. This is the one that you want to share.
Did you share the login to the website, buddy?
You shared that. Well, so under your dashboard, you have like your series and your personal episode list and everything, which is the link he shared. This is the one that actually leads to the series, the one that I just put in at the bottom.
Gotcha. Okay.
Which is easier to find because it's just /series/super-schooled.
Okay, and so since we're not his account, it just goes into the login page.
Yeah.
So it's a big nothing.
Okay.
That's hilarious. So it's not if you were logged in, you could get it, but you can't. So there you have it.
Okay.
That's amazing.
I fixed it. You guys have the actual link now.
That's it.
Yay.
Don't listen to the one I posted. Look at the one Metal posted, not mine, his.
Whoops.
Right here. Excellent. So
All right. Good night. This is a show.
have a good one, guys. Later.
Stay tuned.
Bye. Oh.